McAneely. I'm the librarian here in Moyla Library. Moyla is situated in the northeast of the county, midway between Galway and Roscommon, and 5 miles from, 5 kilometres from Mountbellion. There's been a library here in Moyla for over 50 years, and it's held in high regard by the people in the community. Moyla Branch Library is part of the Galway City and County Library Service. It's open for 10 hours a week, 5 days a week. We have a great selection of books here. 5,000 in stock at this present time. We would have almost 450 members, and last year almost 8,000 books were borrowed and returned. People are constantly using the library. It's lovely to see the families make great use of it. The fathers or the mothers would be down one end browsing the shelves or using the internet, and the children would be very happy down here choosing their books or sitting and reading or playing with the toys. I like to encourage the children to read, and I would keep the classics, the children's classics here in one section, and they are being borrowed all the time. Yesterday, for instance, I had a child that very happily brought home The Turf Cutter's Donkey, which would be one of the old Irish classics. The famous Fives and the Secret Sevens are still so popular now, firm favourites. In our children's section down here, we would have our non-fiction, the horrible science and the horrible histories, favourites of the boys, great picture books, and for the very young readers section here, and the small picture books for the small children. We would have the juvenile books, the books for the juvenile readers, and I have a young adult section. In the non-fiction, in adults, we will have books on travel, history of course, and poetry, hobbies and sport. And we have a cookery section and a gardening section, which are very well used and borrowed. In the adult fiction, I find the murder, mystery and crime, along with the romance, both of those almost take care of themselves. People that read romance or crime know what they like and know what they want. It's only now and again you get to introduce a new author to them. Sometimes women would like you to introduce them to something a little bit different from the romance. They want something with a bit more to the story. And in that case I would recommend Judy Picoult, or maybe Anita Shreve, or the great Douglas Kennedy. Some of the books, for instance, The Island by Victoria Hislop is a great book of fiction for women that want something with a little bit more to the story. We have a book club here in Moyla for the past 3 years, all ladies. That wasn't by design, it's just that's the way it has worked out. We meet once a month, and over the years we have read some really, really good books. There has been some firm favourites. Bel Canto, for one, by Anne Patchett. Everyone loved that, about an opera singer and a Japanese businessman, and it's a romance, it's a love story. The Book Thief by Markus Zusak was another favourite of the book club, and considering it was death telling that story, it was very popular. Mornings in Jenin, another favourite of the book club, which was a lovely story about Palestine. Other books that I would have recommended over the years, for instance, The Kite Runner, which started people onto a rich vein of books about places they had never thought of before. It led on to A Thousand Splendid Suns, or Mornings in Jenin, I've mentioned before, and Geraldine Brooks, her 9 Parts of Desire, and of course The Bookseller of Kabul. I would keep a shelf here beside the desk with recommended books I can recommend, and sometimes people come in and say they wouldn't even think to look on the shelves. They just say, well, what have you got here? Because they know from previous experience that they would be good books. On the shelf here I would have Robert Harris, Fear Index, that would be fairly new. I would have Ian McEwan at the minute, Atonement, because that's very good to recommend for people. The Secret Scripture, and I just see The Bookseller of Kabul is here at the minute. Lean on Pete, another lovely story about a young boy coming of age. Tobias Wolff, Old School, great little read. The Go-Between, I call that a little gem of a book, because, or a hidden gem, because it was sitting on the shelf, even though they had reissued it in a nice flowery cover, but no one was paying any heed to it. And because I had seen the movie years ago, I gave it a go, and I found it absolutely delightful. There isn't a spare word in it. Really, really well. It is one of the most famous lines, first lines in a novel. The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. Beautiful book. Well worth reading. I would have borrowers here that have recommended books to me that have been sitting on the shelves, and when I can get round to reading the books, I will. And I have found that some of the borrowers in particular have really good taste, and they really know what they're talking about. One of those books that was recommended to me by one of the long-time borrowers here was The Island Walkers by John Bemrose. It's a family drama, and a moving story of place and community. Another book recommended was The Fool's Progress, which I could only call a rollicking read, really excellent. The Yacobian Building, another one of the books. This one is set in Egypt. It's about all the inhabitants of one particular building, and their lives and how they interchange with each other, and the past and the future. On every shelf here there would be books I could happily recommend to people. I see here The Known World by Edward P. Jones. It's actually about a black slave owner, which until I read this I never realised there was such a thing. And it's really well written, and for anyone that likes the American novel with the history of the Civil War and all that, this is very excellent. Poisonwood Bible, another book that was recommended to me by a borrower, and my copy now is getting a bit tatty, but still people love it, and I happily recommend it. About a family that go to Africa. The father is an evangelical minister, and he brings his family, his 4 daughters and his wife, to Africa, to the Belgian Congo in 1959, and it is the story is told. Each of the daughters tells the story, and the mother. Very good.